Welcome. My name is Dot Porter. I'm the curator for digital research services in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Kislak Center and the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development group in the Kislak Center, and we do manuscript studies. So we have collections of manuscripts and we do a lot of digital work. Mostly what I do, the digital work. But Coffee with a Codex is our weekly, let's take a book off the shelf and have a close look at it. And it's really one of my favorite parts of my job. So thank you for joining me today. The manuscript that we're going to be looking at today is shelf mark LJS 25. And it is, let me pull up the record. So you should have a link to the record there. This is in Italian, sort of last quarter of the 13th century. Our record says 1275 to 1299 manuscript. The binding is, it's not original to the manuscript. This is late 15th or early 16th century. Florentine leather over wooden boards. So we'll open it up and you can see the wood on the inside is visible, and it's been chewed through a little tiny bit there. And this manuscript has seen some better days. It's a little bit messy. And when we page through it, you'll see also that the binding is quite loose, and there are missing leaves and such. But it is pretty neat. So the text that's copied in here is a Latin translation of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and Metaphysics. And these were both probably his most, so Aristotle, Greek philosopher, his work was hugely influential in the Middle Ages, particularly sort of the later Middle Ages, or I guess the high and later Middle Ages. And then so both of these were very influential and copied many times. And I actually have two other manuscripts here in the room with me that are later, different translations. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about translations. I also have my micro camera. Every week I forget to bring this little micro camera out. And this manuscript has some really nice initials, particularly some of the larger initials have some pretty little sort of decorations in them. So I thought it might be fun if we have time to get some up close views of these larger initials. So let's get started with this. We open up with a table of contents. This is just a bifolia table of contents outlining not the whole manuscript, just I think the Nicomachean Ethics, so just the first text. And we can zoom in a little bit and see how this is looking here. So it's pretty, it's sort of a Gothic hand. I was thinking when I was actually looking at it earlier, I thought, gosh, this manuscript, it looks so much like so many other manuscripts I've shown you recently, because I feel like we've been looking at a lot of sort of 13th century, European manuscripts, but they're all pretty neat. So the text starts sort of in the middle of things. So the first and the last leaf of this, the opening quire, are missing. So we sort of start in the middle of a sentence. If you've been here before and seen some of the other manuscripts we've looked at recently, some of this is going to start looking familiar. So we have two columns. We have titles written across the top of the page. So as you're reading, you know what it is you're reading. We have initials. There's only one initial on this page, which is this red one. But as we go through, you'll see we have alternating red and blue initials. We also have paragraph markings here. So these red and blue paragraph markings. And all of these things would have helped a reader keep their place as they're reading through the text. So here we go. I don't know if you're close enough, if the microphone is close enough, but this is quite crunchy. I don't know if you can hear that. But the parchment is pretty crunchy, which is neat. And it also, here we're in the middle. And here you can see what I'm talking about, the binding being quite loose. So you can see that there's thread. The thread is actually coming out here. I don't know, Amy, if we should make a note to conservation that this might, I mean, it's not going to fall apart. When I come to the end of the quire, you'll see a large gap here where it's sort of being held together. But this was a manuscript that has clearly been used. It has large margins, which we have seen before. It also has notes, although here's some, it looks like there were notes that were maybe trimmed off. So remember, the manuscript was written in the sort of late 1300s, and it was bound maybe 100 years later, more than 100 years later. So it is looking like the pages were trimmed around the edges when it was bound, when it was rebound. So I want to take a look at this initial, because I think it's really pretty. It has pen work around it, and in the middle it's got sort of flowery pen work. And I'm going to pull out the micro camera just to see if we can get a closer look at that. So I'm going to take this out, and then I've got my little micro camera here, and this is going to take a second to get, here we go. So this is what that ink looks like on the page. Let me make that a little brighter, maybe. There we go. So there's the ink on the page, and you can see that the red of the outline was done first, and then the blue ink, the hatch marks, were added later, which is probably, it's kind of neat that you can see even the ordering of that, because I think maybe it's clear when you're looking at it. We'll switch back really quick. But it's very delicate work. Here we are. Delicate work. Maybe it doesn't look quite so delicate when you're very, very close in, but that's a different kind of way to look at that. Thank you, Cheryl. I think it's pretty neat. I think it's pretty neat too. It's certainly a kind of interesting way to look at these initials as sort of little artworks that aren't, you know, the point of the book is not the initials and not the artwork. The point of the book is the Nicomachean ethics. But there we go. All right. So I don't have a huge amount to say about the text, except that, let's see. Oh, the translation. I did want to say the translation of this particular manuscript is by, I had it here, William of Moorbeck. He was a Dominican in the 13th century, so earlier than this. And he translated it from the Greek. Aristotle and the tradition of his texts in the Middle Ages was sort of interesting, because we have translations of his into Latin from very early. So Boethius, who we've looked at a few manuscripts before that have translations by Boethius, who lived in the 6th century, I think 5th or 6th century. And so Boethius and others translated Aristotle quite early, and then in the West, his texts were sort of lost. Copies weren't made, the Greek was lost, but they were taken, or, you know, they ended up in the Middle East. And in the 9th century, you started having scholars in the Middle East translate Aristotle and other Greek philosophers into Arabic. And then during the Crusades, particularly in the sort of the early 13th century, there was this cross-cultural, not all good, obviously, because the Crusades, but you did have the Greek and also Arabic translations of Aristotle and others coming back into the West. And so that's why you have this growth of translations of Aristotle, copies of Aristotle in the sort of high and later Middle Ages there. And so this manuscript is one of these examples of an earlier maybe copy coming through here. The other ones we have that I'll pull out in a second are a little bit later. So Heather Bogart, is that ink or gouache? I always tend to assume colors are paints rather than ink. I don't actually know. I don't know. Amy, do you know? I wish Nick Herman was here because he's actually an art historian and he would definitely know.
I also wish that Nick were here, but I would say that for these, ink is very possible because they're using red and blue ink throughout the text as well. So when Dot said that this is pen work, I think that's right. This is being done with the pen and ink.
Right. So here's just another, it looks very much like the other one. Just a little bit more of this up close. There you go. Yeah, I think it is the same, probably the same ink that's being used in the other places. All right, so, and then Rebecca asks about the table of contents on different material. So we'll go back and look at the table of contents and then we'll switch manuscripts just to have another look. I think that it's parchment. I think it may have been, it's certainly messier than the other one. And you can also see, I was noticing this earlier, there's this sort of splotch. So this is the opening bifolia that has the table of contents on it. And there's a splotch on the back. And what this is, I'm pretty sure, is the page that used to be here that's now missing had an it would have opened with an illumination and then the rest, the writing. And it was pressed together on this page, maybe water damage. This looks like there's some kind of damage that's been happening. And so it got imprinted on that side. So I think that clearly the table of contents was in here when the manuscript was complete, or at least when this first quire was complete, and something happened. And so I think that the condition might just be, it just got used hard, like it just got kind of, it was just kind of used. And you can see there's also holes.
I think the holes might point to more water damage, that like if the parchment stuck to the cover that was there before, and then you know how when you like pull apart two things that are stuck, part can remain stuck to the other thing. It looks like that may be what happened here, although parchment's really tough, so it's hard to sort of imagine it falling apart that much, but
it is, but maybe that is. And there's also, I imagine that there was something on this, and so maybe that's that it got stuck, or it could have gotten stuck on either. Well, no, because on the front it would have been stuck on this side, because I don't think it was stuck. Well, I don't know. It could have been all sort of stuck together, but it definitely looks like water, sort of water damage there. So Madeline is asking about the colors having meaning. So as far as I know, the blue and the red, at least my understanding of it, is that it is used within the manuscript as sort of as an assist to the reader. So you go back and forth, you alternate between red and blue. You're supposed to, although I that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you do have sort of red after red, and maybe that means the scribe wasn't paying attention. But this is very sort of typical. This is a typical look for a manuscript from this period. Sorry, I keep
Dot,
trying
I
to keep
love
that straight.
you've made an analogy in the past about how it's easier to keep your place in a spreadsheet if
Mhm.
if alternate lines are darker and lighter. And I think that's very much the idea of the alternation between the red and blue. You're less likely to skip if you're going back and forth between two options.
Yeah, I forgot I made that analogy. That was a good analogy. I'll have to remember that again the next time. So this manuscript was written in Italy, according to the record, in the late sort of 13th century. So I want to close this up and have a look at another one. This one is MS Codex 760. Which is, so the LJS manuscript is from the Schoenberg collection that was collected by Larry Schoenberg, and then gifted to us. And MS Codex means that the library purchased it ourselves. And so this one is later. This is also written in Italy, in the later 15th century. Well, written in Italy in the 15th century. So at some point in the 15th century, you can see immediately it looks very different. Very humanist Italian. We're getting into this area. So this is also a translation of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, also translated directly from the Greek. This was translated by Leonardo Bruni. And Leonardo Bruni lived sort of in the late 14th, early 15th century. He was an Italian humanist, and he did a lot of translations of from Greek. And so this is what we have here. So a lot that is different. Oh, can't see that. A lot that's different. Oh, let me see what the binding is before we get started. The binding is actually, it doesn't say original, but contemporary binding, and it's got these nice bosses on the cover, which is quite nice, and there's a little bit of snacking, bookworm snacking that's happened here. So the hand is a sort of a humanistic script, what you'd expect to see in an Italian manuscript at this time. It does have an initial here, but a very different style from the one that we looked at before. And out of curiosity, I haven't done this yet. I'm going to see what this looks like under the micro.
And I'm going to play our old director, Will Knowles' role and say, I suspect that initial was added at a later date, both in terms of style and the way it doesn't fit the space that's been left for it.
It doesn't really, does it? So
I think that's the initial is nice, but a bit dubious.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if actually getting close to it helped helped at all, but maybe if I zoom in here a little bit, it's definitely, yeah, it does look later, doesn't it? The red, I mean, you would expect for that red outline to be on top of the text anyway, but it definitely is. It's not quite big enough for the space.
Right, and also humanist manuscript aesthetics went in a more classical direction. They were looking back to Greek and Roman art, and so they moved away from, I mean, the shape of the A would be at home in a humanist manuscript, but the little flowers around it are not so humanist. Yeah, the little flowers are more 17th century, maybe. I don't know, but definitely later.
I'm looking to see if there are more. So if we go to 84 verso, there is supposed to be a, oh, if I can see the numbering, there's supposed to be another initial. Oh my heavens, this book smells. Oh, sometimes I do wish that I could get the smell of this to you guys because it's really smelly. 82, 83. Okay, here we go. This is probably more like what we're expecting. There. So this is the kind of initial that was probably intended for that opening. Wow, I like that. Okay, and I'm gonna do this one with the camera because I think this is pretty neat. That's even got gold in it. Ooh, gold. Ooh, there we go. There's some gold.
And the blue is gorgeous too.
The blue is really nice, and I love. The only thing about this, I love this microscope, but it's too close sometimes. Like I want something sort of in between. But this is just, I love this initial. This is really nice. And again, it's not the point, the point of the manuscript is the text of Aristotle, but that they took the time. There we go. That's nice. They took the time to.
As I look at this page,
decorate
I'm
it up.
wondering if the whole first page is a replacement with the letter on it. The script.
The script is different, isn't it? It's not as nice
Yeah.
at the start.
I wonder, I don't know if there are just a couple of pages that are different at the beginning or.
Let's take a look. Because I think you're right. Oh, because even here,
Yeah.
this is just 4 and 5. Oh, look, it's a bifolia, I think. Or is it? No. It's just a single leaf. It's one leaf. Nope. No, I was right before. There's a bifolia here at the start that's been tucked in. And it's attached. There's a stub here. So there was a leaf. This is a stub here. And then this has been attached. These 2 leaves that are conjoined. And then, yeah, and you can really see if I zoom in how the left is so different. Oh, that's so much nicer. Yeah, I opened this up and I was like, this isn't nearly as nice as I thought it was. I thought it was going to be. No, but this humanist script is so, and again, in comparison with the earlier one, it looks so, it's so much neater. And as you said about the initial, it really is sort of looking backwards to the classical. Like the earlier one looks very medieval and this one looks really classical, even though it's later, because they were really trying to copy that aesthetic.
That's part of the shift from 2 columns to 1 also is that the humanists liked the way Carolingian manuscripts looked, and they had a single text block, not the 2 columns.
Yeah. This is neat. Let's see. The combination, so Lynn says the combination of aesthetics with the ethics in both manuscripts seems significant, though they are different. Yeah, like they're both like the aesthetics are part of the experience of the translation of the text and how they're presenting the text. So with that in mind, we have a couple more minutes. I'll go ahead and get the third one, because the third one, although it's also it was written about the same time as this one, it's a little bit different in a way. So this is MS Codex 763. Oh, you see that? MS Codex 763. Oh, I said 1663. Here we go, 763 there. And this one is, this is a translation of the Metaphysics. So the first one we looked at was both Nicomachean ethics and metaphysics. The second one was Nicomachean ethics. This is metaphysics. And this is also the Latin translation by Williamos of Morbecque, the Dominican monk. The binding is contemporary, stamped half calf over wooden boards. So again, the wood is visible, and then we have these nice clasps there. So this was written in Germany in the 15th century. So this was written at the same time as the second one, but it was written in Germany and not in Italy. So it looks German. It looks very German and not Italian. It doesn't have that sort of humanistic look, right? It's also written on paper. So the earlier one was written on paper, not surprisingly, and then MS Codex 760 was written on parchment. No, the earlier one was written on parchment. The second one was also parchment. This is written on paper. Lacking, unfortunately, an initial, which space was left. Nobody bothered to come in and fill it in. And this is interesting because it has a lot of notes here. You can see even on the first page, we have interlinear notes and marginal notes. And the only thing that we have in terms of sort of helping you keep track is the occasional, keep track of where you are, that is, as a reader, is the occasional, where'd it go? Paragraph mark, and it's just in red. So there's not a lot of color. It's not very pretty. The script is sort of a German Gothic kind of script, not a humanist script. We have missing initials here. And that's weird. After the first page, there's no more notes. I have textbooks like that.
I was going to say, people start with good intentions.
You start strong and then sort of let up. So this is actually a really clean copy. It doesn't look like a whole lot was done with it. And then further back, there's not even any. The rubricator didn't even get this far, so there aren't the red marks on the initials. But still, a 15th century, somebody took the time to copy the whole thing in Germany in the 15th century. So it's just another example of the spread of Aristotle and his thought translations in different places, and the aesthetic of the manuscript. So that's it. So I think that's it for today. Thank you all for coming. This was pretty fun, and we'll be back again next week and the week after. We will be starting on Tuesday in September. So make sure that your calendars are set for Tuesdays starting in September. And this has been recorded, and I'll put it up in the next couple of days on YouTube if you want to see it again. So I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you again soon, I hope.